In the 17th century, a sultan sealed a complex of royal tombs in Marrakech. He walled it up. He filled in the entrances. He planted over the exterior. Whatever his reasons, jealousy of a predecessor's legacy, a desire to erase rivals, simple indifference to what was inside, the effect was the same. The complex disappeared. The people who built it were dead. The people who knew about it grew old and died. And the tombs sat in the dark for over 200 years underneath the city, visited by nobody. The Saadian Tombs were sealed by Sultan Moulay Ismail in the 17th century and not rediscovered until 1917. Not by excavation. Not by an archaeologist following a lathe. By accident, by aerial photography taken during the French colonial administration, which revealed from the air the outlines of a structure that should not have been there, buried beneath a neighborhood of the Medina. Inside, the remains of 66 members of the Saadian dynasty in 3 elaborately decorated mausoleums. The central chamber, the Hall of 12 Columns, contains Italian Carrara marble columns, carved cedar stalactite ceilings gilded with gold, and zellage tilework at a density that makes the eyes work. Italian marbles. Cedar ceilings gilded with gold. Zellage tilework covering every surface. All of it perfectly preserved. All of it forgotten. All of it sealed in the dark for 2 centuries while the city above it grew and changed and was conquered and rebuilt. But here is the question I want you to hold for this entire video. The most famous square in Africa, Djemaa el-Fna, has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2001. But its name, in Arabic, means something that most visitors never know. Something that completely changes how you see a square where acrobats perform and storytellers gather and food vendors cook under the stars. What does Djemaa el-Fna means? And why does the answer tell you everything about Marrakech's history? Drop your guess in the comments. The answer is at the end. Welcome to Globe Curious. This is Marrakech. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated with more amazing videos and curiosities. You'll only find here. Leave a like to help me reach even more people and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Stay until the end to discover even more incredible facts. Let's talk about the tombs. Because what was found in them and the story of how they were found is one of the most extraordinary episodes in North African history. The Saadian dynasty ruled Morocco from 1549 to 1659, a century of relative prosperity and artistic flourishing, during which Marrakech served as the empire's capital. Sultan Ahmed al-Mansur, who reigned from 1578 to 1603, was the dynasty's most powerful figure. He defeated the Songhai Empire at the Battle of Tondabai in 1591, bringing control of the trans-Saharan gold trade to Morocco. He imported Italian Carrara marble for his palace. He gilded ceilings with gold from sub-Saharan Africa. And he built the mausoleums where his dynasty would eventually rest. The central chamber, the Hall of 12 Columns, is one of the finest examples of Moroccan decorative art in existence. Italian Carrara marble columns, carved cedar stalactite ceilings, and zellage at a density that makes the eyes work. 12 marble columns. A cedar ceiling carved into muqarnas, the honeycomb stalactite formations that characterize Islamic decorative architecture at its most elaborate, and gilded with pure gold. Zellage tilework, the intricate geometric mosaic that covers walls and floors in patterns of extraordinary complexity. All created for a ruler who had the resources of the trans-Saharan gold trade at his disposal. And then the dynasty ended. The Alaouites replaced the Saadians. The new Sultan, Moulay Ismail, who moved the Moroccan capital to Meknes, sealed the complex, perhaps to prevent it from being used as a rallying point for Saadian loyalists. Perhaps simply because he had no interest in maintaining the monuments of a rival dynasty. The reasons are not fully documented. The outcome was complete. The tombs were sealed in the 17th century and not rediscovered until 1917, when aerial photography taken by the French colonial administration revealed the outlines of the complex beneath the Medina. From the air in 1917. An airplane, a camera, a photograph, and suddenly visible after 200 years of invisibility, the outlines of one of the finest funerary complexes in North Africa. Today, the Saadian Tombs are one of Marrakech's most visited sites. Entry costs approximately 70 dirhams, about $7. The morning light in the main chamber is remarkable. And the contrast between the opulence inside and the fact that it was walled off and forgotten for 2 centuries is one of Marrakech's great historical ironies. Now let's talk about the square. Because Djemaa el-Fna is not simply Africa's most famous public space. It is one of the most extraordinary daily transformations in any city on Earth. Djemaa el-Fna has been the cultural heart of Marrakech since the city's founding by the Almoravid dynasty in the 11th century. In 2001, UNESCO recognized it as a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity, one of the first places in the world to receive this distinction. One of the first places in the world to receive UNESCO Intangible Heritage designation. Not a building, not a monument, a public square, the living activity that takes place in it every day. What makes Djemaa el-Fna extraordinary is its daily metamorphosis. In the morning, it is relatively quiet, orange juice vendors, a few musicians, some tourists. By afternoon, it begins to wake. By sunset, it has become something else entirely. Food stalls arrive at dusk, dozens of them, each one numbered, each one with its own calling cards and smoke and the insistent invitations of the vendors. Acrobats. Storytellers, the haliki, who perform in Darija, classical Arabic, and sometimes Berber, telling stories that extend across multiple evenings, with audiences who return night after night to hear the continuation. Musicians playing the nawa, the trance music of sub-Saharan origin, the monotone string instrument and the iron castanets, the music that was brought to Morocco by enslaved people from West Africa and has been practiced here for centuries. Henna artists, herbalists, snake charmers, fortune tellers. The square was honored for its unique concentration of traditional cultural activities, storytelling, music, dance, herbal medicine, and a living tradition of human connection that dates back nearly 1,000 years. A living tradition of human connection. For nearly 1,000 years, the same square, the same types of performers, the same pattern of gathering at sunset and dispersing at midnight. The same smoke rising from the same kind of food stalls. The same voices calling, the same music beginning as the light fades. And the name that most visitors never know. Djemaa el-Fna translates roughly as Assembly of the Dead or Assembly of Nothingness, likely referring to its historical use as a public execution ground. Assembly of the Dead. The square where acrobats and storytellers and food vendors and tourists gather every evening was, for centuries, also the place where public executions were carried out. Where heads were displayed on poles. Where the crowd came not for entertainment, but for the administration of justice, or something that was called justice, in a city ruled by a sultan who needed to demonstrate his power in the most visible possible way. The executions are long gone. The name remained. Now let's talk about the gardens. Because the story of the Jardin Majorelle is one of the most unexpected combinations of French painting, Moroccan botany, and high fashion in the history of any garden anywhere. The Majorelle garden was created by French painter Jacques Majorelle between 1923 and 1962. He devoted 40 years of his life to it, acquiring the land, planting the botanical collection, painting the studio and the pots and the walls in a specific shade of cobalt blue that has since become known as Majorelle blue, and which he registered as his own color. Majorelle blue. A specific shade of cobalt, vivid, slightly electric, unlike the blues you typically encounter in buildings or gardens, that the painter Jacques Majorelle developed, registered, and applied systematically to every structure in his garden. The pavilion, the pots, the walls, the fountains, everything blue. A specific blue, his blue. He described the garden as a momentous task to which I give myself entirely. It will take my last years from me and I will fall, exhausted under its branches, after having given it all my love. He was right. He died in 1962 in Paris, having sold the garden in the 1950s to pay his debts. The garden fell into disrepair. By 1980, there were plans to demolish it and build a hotel complex. In 1980, Yves Saint Laurent and Pierre Bergé bought the garden to save it from destruction. For many years, the Jardin Majorelle has provided me with an endless source of inspiration, and I have often dreamt of its unique colors, Saint Laurent said. The most celebrated fashion designer in the world, whose relationship with Marrakech began in the 1960s, when he first visited and felt immediately at home in its colors and light and sensory density, bought the garden to save it. He and his partner Pierre Bergé restored it, added species, employed 20 gardeners, and turned it into one of the most extraordinary botanical spaces in Africa. Yves Saint Laurent chose the Majorelle Garden as his eternal resting place. After his death in 2008, his ashes were scattered in the garden's rose garden. His ashes are in the garden. The fashion designer who saved the painter's garden is part of it now, scattered among the roses, beneath the blue pavilion, in the city he loved more than almost any other on earth. Now for the secrets. Marrakech rewards patient and curious visitors with extraordinary discoveries. Secret number 1, the Medina is a city within a city and most of it is invisible. The Marrakech that tourists see is 10% of the Marrakech that exists. The souks, the covered markets that radiate from Djemaa el-Fna, are the part of the Medina that most visitors see. But behind the commercial streets, through the derbs, the narrow, often dead-end alleyways that lead into residential quarters, is the city where people live. Neighborhood fountains. Communal ovens where residents bring their bread dough to be baked, hammams. Small mosques. Children playing in courtyards. The domestic life of a living medieval city, entirely invisible to someone walking the souk routes. Secret number 2, the Mellah still shows its history. The Mellah, the old Jewish quarter, is south of Bahia Palace. The door frames of former Jewish houses still show the rectangular indentations where mezuzot were once fixed. Muslim families live there now. Nobody has filled in the marks. The marks where the mezuzot were fixed, the small cases containing scriptural verses that Jewish households affixed to their door frames, are still visible on houses in the Mellah where Jewish families lived for centuries before emigrating, primarily to Israel in the mid-20th century. Muslim families live in those houses now. They have not filled in the marks. The trace of a community is still there in the walls. Secret number 3, the 7 Saints of Marrakech. The 7 Saints of Marrakech, the city's spiritual protectors, are buried in zawiyas scattered across the Medina. A circuit of the 7 is a pilgrimage that most Marrakechis know and most visitors have never heard of. A 7 Saints, a 7 Shrines. A route through the Medina that has nothing to do with the official tourist circuit, no entry fees, no queues, no English captions, that represents the living spiritual life of the city. The zawiyas are the tombs and meeting houses of Sufi brotherhoods, places of prayer, of music, of a religious tradition that has been practiced in Marrakech for centuries. The Circuit of the 7 Saints is one of the most authentic routes through Marrakech available to a visitor who knows to look for it. Secret number 4, the Ben Youssef Madrasa once housed 900 students. Ben Youssef Madrasa, the intricate stucco work and cedar carvings in this former Quranic school are arguably the most beautiful in North Africa. The Ben Youssef Madrasa, the Quranic school adjacent to the Ben Youssef Mosque, the largest mosque in Marrakech, was once home to approximately 900 students who lived and studied in small cells arranged around a central courtyard. The courtyard contains some of the finest carved plaster and cedar work in Morocco, surfaces covered entirely in Arabic calligraphy and geometric ornament, layer upon layer, at a level of craftsmanship that took skilled artisans years to complete. It is free with the Marrakech Museum Pass. It is consistently described by visitors as the most beautiful interior they saw in the city. Secret number 5, the tanneries dye leather using methods unchanged for centuries. The Chwara Tannery, the largest of the 3 tanneries in the Marrakech Medina, has been operating since the medieval period. Leather is soaked in large stone vats filled with natural dyes. Saffron for yellow, indigo for blue, poppy for red, mint for green, and pigeon droppings mixed with ammonia to soften the hides before dyeing. The process has not changed significantly in 1,000 years. The tanneries are best seen from the rooftop terraces of the leather shops that overlook them. The shopkeepers will give you sprigs of mint to hold under your nose against the smell of the ammonia. Marrakech in 2026 is Morocco's most visited city, receiving over 4 million international visitors per year, and one of the most sensory-dense travel experiences available anywhere in the world. The Medina, enclosed within 19 kilometers of 12th-century ramparts, functions as a living museum. The monuments are concentrated. All major sites lie within a 15-minute walk of Djemaa el-Fna. The Saadian Tombs, Baia Palace, Ben Youssef Madrasa, El Badi Palace ruins, a single day's walking covers them all. The Riad, the traditional Moroccan courtyard house, converted into boutique accommodation, is Marrakech's most distinctive lodging option. A mid-range Riad costs between 500 and 1,500 dirhams per night, approximately $50 to $150, and typically includes breakfast. From the outside, Riads are invisible, a plain door in an alley wall with no indication of what lies behind. Inside, a courtyard garden, tiled walls, a fountain, rooms arranged on multiple levels. The contrast between the bare exterior and the ornate interior is a deliberate architectural principle, not an accident. The Atlas Mountains are visible from the rooftops of the Medina when the weather is clear, a line of snow-topped peaks to the south. Imlil, the trailhead village for the ascent of Jebel Toubkal, the highest peak in North Africa, is approximately 90 minutes from Marrakech by taxi. The mountain is there. The city is there. The desert starts about 3 hours to the east. And now, the answer. I asked you, what does Djemaa el-Fna means? And why does the answer tell you everything about Marrakech's history? Djemaa el-Fna translates roughly as Assembly of the Dead or Assembly of Nothingness, referring to its historical use as a public execution ground. Assembly of the Dead. The square where storytellers have gathered for 1,000 years, where the Nawa music plays at midnight, where the food stalls fill with smoke at dusk and the acrobats tumble and the snake charmers play their pipes. This square was once a place of public execution, where heads were displayed, where the sultan demonstrated his power to the city below. This is Marrakech, a city where the most vibrant public space is named after deaths, where the most ornate royal tombs were sealed, forgotten, and rediscovered from the air 200 years later, where the most extraordinary botanical garden was created by a painter who gave his name to its color, saved by a fashion designer who chose it as his final resting place. The Medina divides into distinct quarters: the souks, the residential derbs, the Mela, the Kasbah. The Marrakech that tourists see is 10% of the Marrakech that exists. 90% invisible, living according to rhythms that have not changed in centuries. Cooking bread in communal ovens, making leather in vats of pigeon droppings and indigo, telling stories in the square that means Assembly of the Dead. The most extraordinary city in Africa. One of the most extraordinary cities on Earth. Did you guess Assembly of the Dead? Tell me in the comments. And tell me, have you been to Marrakech? What surprised you most? I'll see you in the next city.